What we have here is a 1960s Japanese tin litho Volkswagen sedan toy. Now, originally this had a remote that connected via cable to the back of the car. Now, it had a this was before the days of course, wireless remote-controlled cars, but it was also in the infancy of the remote-controlled toy genre. And so the car's forward and back motion was obviously controlled by reversing the polarity on the motor's power supply, which the battery box was in the remote itself. Okay, but what made it unique and really very different from anything made today, or even when I was a kid in the 1980s and 90s, is that the steering was controlled mechanically, purely mechanically. The handheld remote had like a little plastic steering wheel on it, and you would rotate that back and forth, and it would actually push a solid core cable, like a brake cable in a bicycle, in and out, and that would link up to the steering assembly, or steering rack, and that is how it was controlled. That is how you steer the car. But when I found this, I actually found this in the trash, well, actually in what's technically known as the Still Good Shed in the town I lived in. And I never got the remote. The remote was long gone, so I chopped off what was left of the cable, and I used it as a display piece until about 7 years ago. I hooked it up to a variable voltage power supply, and I tested out the motor, and the motor still worked, believe it or not, but I ended up blowing it out. So that happened. So I was out cruising around today in my car, and I went to a local antique shop that I've been frequenting for many years, and I found this, and I couldn't turn it down. I couldn't not let this walk away from me. This is this is a different version of that, almost the same car. This is again another Japanese litho toy, and it appears to be an original and not a reproduction. The condition was too good to pass up. I mean, you don't usually see them this complete in this good condition. There's no dents, no scratches. Well, a couple of scratches. And, all right, so there's a little dent there, but it's overall in excellent condition. No rust. It's all there. And this is what you call a bump and go toy. So it has these wheels in the bottom that spin, and whenever there's any resistance, it causes the entire assembly to rotate, and it changes the direction of the car. So the car will move forward until it hits something, and then it'll change direction. It's a bump and go. Bump and go toys were not as, I don't think they were as desirable or as popular, but they were definitely more common. And I know when I was growing up, I hated them because they didn't work like real cars and real real motorcycles and trucks. They just didn't. You couldn't control the direction. But and I imagine the reason that this is in such good condition was because either it doesn't work, or whatever kid owned this didn't really like it. But you'll notice how there's some similarities between these two toys. You know, they both have a visible, well, alternate reality engine. And a real Volkswagen sedan, the fan is behind a shroud towards the firewall, but we're going to pretend that's not a reality. It looks like there's a belt missing. There's pulleys in the engine compartment where there would be belts, but they're definitely not there now. So they probably were made of rubber, and they may have dissolved. I imagine that's what happened. This one doesn't have that, but it does have there should be a light inside here, an incandescent light that lights up. On this car, it had one, and it was somewhere in there. But the interior is all lithographically printed, stamped tin, just like this one. Very similar in design. Now this one was made by Bandai, a company now famous for like Power Rangers toys. They're still in business, I believe. But this one it doesn't really say. It just says Volkswagen made in Japan. We're going to find out if this thing works. I'm I got some D cells. That's all I could find in the house. We're going to see if it turns on. Made a few repairs. So I fixed the battery box. I re-glued it where it was cracked, which should set up pretty soon. I lubricated the motor. And let's see what happens. I'm going to hit the power switch. Don't know if it works, but we're going to find out. Here we go. It works, it works, it works! Alright, it worked better on hard surfaces. Welcome back. Yeah, I know I left. Didn't tell you that. Whoops. I did some homework and I found out that this appears to be modeled after, I'm just going to shoot in the dark and say 1962, 63, maybe a 64 Beetle, based on a couple of visual cues. The double barred bumper in the front, it's got the split bumper in the back, but this rear deck lid appears to be an earlier design, possibly late 50s. But they had this embossed W type shape in the deck lid up until about early 1960s. And I'm not a Beetle nut to the level that some of you are. I happen to love Volkswagen Beetles, which is what attracted me to this toy in the first place. But I don't know every detail and every model year, every change that was made throughout the production run of the sedan. But even though it doesn't say Bandai on the bottom, it appears to be a Bandai product. I found a couple of pictures of the Bandai Beetles in original box, and they looked exactly like this, and the bottom looks exactly like this without the Bandai stamp. It's possible that it could have been a sticker, but who knows. But anyway, this is all polished, cleaned up, oiled. Everything is good to go. I actually replaced, there's supposed to be a belt on the engine, or in the engine compartment that connects the fan with these two pulleys. And I actually have a belt that'll fit that, so I put it on. So now when I fire it up, everything works as it's supposed to. Switches on the bottom. Here we go. So you can see that the fan moves as well as that belt and those two pulleys. Pretty cool, huh? I thought so. The level of precision in this toy is still just non-existent at all. They didn't do precision back then, I guess. You know, these were built very cheaply. They were mass-produced by hand, and they were produced at a low cost. And that's really how the Japanese got a reputation for building junk. They built a lot of toys for a lot of people, and they did it on a shoestring budget. You take one of these Japanese tin toys, which was made in, between 1950 and 1970 or so, and you're going to get, quality that is all over the map. The reason this toy survived is because it wasn't played with. But if it was played with on a regular basis, it wouldn't have lasted a year or two, because it's very fragile. The windows on this thing are made of like cellophane. I mean, it wouldn't take much to break these. So you got to be really careful when working around or working on something like this. The deck lid is a little bit thicker, but not by much. Well, maybe not. Yeah, the deck lid is thicker. But that's a vacuum-formed sheet of whatever plastic they used back then. It could be cellophane, it could be something else. But the rest of the toy is metal, and it is heavy when you put batteries in it. It weighs quite a bit. If you drop this thing once, it's done. Which is why so few of these are still left in working condition. But you didn't want to watch me or listen to me ramble on and on. So I'm going to put this. We're going to run it on the floor. We'll see what it does. See how she runs. Here we go. Look at it go. There were many versions of this toy. There was one version that had a handheld remote, that connected via umbilical cord that not only carried electricity to the motor, but it also provided a means for steering the vehicle through a mechanical cable that slid in and out based on the steering wheel position. And it would link directly to the steering rack, and it would allow you to control the direction of travel. I actually had one of these, but unfortunately it broke. And it runs on 2 D-cell batteries because those are the most common batteries of that time period. D-cells were used mostly in flashlights, and so they were pretty ubiquitous in American households, and households worldwide, I imagine. When I was a kid, bump and go toys like this were pretty passé. Nobody really liked them. They were the toys that no kid wanted to get. Generally last-minute purchases from local drugstores. But in 1965 or so, when this was probably made, it didn't matter. It was definitely an entertaining toy that anyone would have been proud to own. You see how it kind of gets itself stuck a little bit. Hard to believe that we're playing with a toy that dates back to the mid-1960s, and it still does what it's supposed to do. And it's doing a nice job of it. Look at her go. I imagine a toy like this might not last the holiday vacation week. Especially not now. Yeah, it's kind of got itself trapped in a small area here. And it's designed to make that noise. As I showed earlier, it has this little clacker thing that runs off the main drive wheel, or drive gear. It's going to need some intervention. So it's kind of stuck in a funk here. Alright. Here we go. See where it goes now. That little that bump and go mechanism works exactly like a differential in a modern car. And it works on the same principle. So if the drive wheels hit any resistance, that motion is transferred through gears to rotating that entire drive wheel disc, which is what causes it to change direction when it bumps. So any resistance that it hits, no matter what, it causes that energy to be transferred to rotating that disc. And it doesn't work on carpet. Too much resistance. What amazes me, though, is the sheer lack of precision in its design. I mean, look at it. It's just, that plate just wobbles like crazy. But despite all that, it really works. Nice. Getting myself caught under the dinette again. There we go. Hours of fun for all ages. Including me. And because it runs on 2 D cells, it'll go for quite a while before it runs out of juice. The batteries have quite a bit of amperage in them, so they'll run for quite a while. It even clears the chair. It's amazing. One of the things that drove me crazy about these bump and go toys is that the front wheels are really there for decoration. And I had like some form of OCD for kids, and I hated toys that had non-functional parts. As a child, even that fake fan in the back would have been it would have bothered me. I would rather not have it than have a, you know, something that doesn't do anything. But bump and go toys were, like I said, when I was growing up, they were pretty much replaced entirely by either tethered remote control vehicles or radio controlled vehicles, and the bump and go stuff just didn't do it for me. I had a few toys when I was younger that worked on that principle, and I hated them. I just didn't play with them. I think it's so fun to watch. Alright, that's enough. Yeah, this thing is awesome. one of the best things I've ever purchased. I found it, I think it was like 40 bucks. It was worth it. The repairs were so minor. I lubricated the drive line. It was pretty much frozen up. So, and I replaced the belt in the back so that the pulleys now move with the fan, you know, just to add to the visual element of what this thing can do. These wheels are not right, so I'm going to say that this was probably from the later part of the 60s. It's hard to say, really, because these wheels don't look like they belong on a 63, 64. They look to be much later than that, but I don't know. You tell me. If anyone knows anything about these, I'd love to know, number one, when did they stop making them? And number two, how can I determine the age of this one? There's no serial number, there's not even a manufacturer's mark. It just happens to look like a Bandai, and based on a few things that I saw. And I don't think these were made under license. I mean, they could have been. I mean, it does have VW logos on it, but would VW have sued for building something like this without authorization? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. These are many questions that I have, and I look forward to hearing from you guys who are into toy collecting for more information. For cleaning it, by the way, all I did was I applied a coat of automotive wax, which made it shine like the sun, and I'm very happy with how it came out. And whoever owned this before me really took good care of it. It probably sat on a shelf. It probably didn't work, and they put it on a shelf and forgot about it. And that's why it's still here today, still running like it did back in the 1960s. It's amazing. I wonder how many toys today will still be functioning 50, 60 years from now. Probably not many. And with that, I will bid you good night.